the vaccine plus approach. Now, why are we slightly more optimistic about the UK? Now, we believe that some interesting data is about to be released from Pfizer, not from Pfizer, from Oxford AstraZeneca. So this is the chief executive. Now, of course, we chief executives want to make their products look good, one would imagine. But we believe data's coming out on this pretty soon, and word is it's going to be quite positive. So UK is not seeing as many hospitalisations relative to Europe, despite high number of cases, which is good, as Pascal points out. And this is related to long-term immunity after antibodies wane. T-cell immunity. So as we've looked at many times, the immune system is multifaceted. Antibodies are often produced fairly quickly, but we know they wane after a few months, whereas the T memory cells, the memory B cells and the memory T cells, some of those can stay after some infections for decades, for many decades. So the memory T cells stimulated to recognise the SARS coronavirus 2 by the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine may hang around or may be maintained for much longer than those produced by the mRNA vaccines. This is the data that's probably going to be coming out soon. Very interesting if this is confirmed, and it's looking like it's going to be. Looks like AstraZeneca initially gives high levels of T cells. So the T cells are good because the T lymphocytes will, T killer cells, T cytotoxic cells, for example, will directly kill infected cells. But also they produce memory cells, which, as we say, can be there for years or decades. Now, if you remember the background to this, France, Germany, Spain, Belgium restricted AstraZeneca at the beginning to under 65s because they said, wrongly, that it didn't have good efficacy in the over 65s. And we had a president in France, what's his name? President Macron, saying that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was quasi ineffective. And really that statement was not based on data, as I understand it at the time, at all. So it was, you got the impression there was a bit of politics going on. UK may have high T cells from natural infection as well. So that is ironically because we've been so laxed over the last well, from when did we open up? Was it June or July? So basically the later part of summer and autumn, there's been very few restrictions, which has allowed the virus to spread, which might have increased herd immunity. And also in the UK, we seem to have cross-infection from other coronavirus infections. Now, again, as we know, there's 4 coronaviruses that cause the common cold, and now the data that this causes some cross-immunity with SARS coronavirus 2 is accumulating. If you have SARS coronavirus, not SARS, if you have coronavirus common cold, the immunity from that probably wanes after about a year to 18 months. But in that time, you will have better immunity. So the combination of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine producing possibly longer lasting memory immunity, more natural infection in the UK over the past few months, and of course infection figures have been very high in the UK for some time, and cross immunity from other common cold coronaviruses might well mean that the UK does better, at least in terms of hospitalisations. So a government source, this is quoted in the popular press, well, the reputable popular press, but we don't know who said it. European leaders had all these unfounded concerns about AstraZeneca and its use in older people. Correct, they did. If you look at the data, you can see us using it early has been incredibly helpful in terms of protecting older and vulnerable people from the disease for longer. This does seem to be transpiring to be the case. So, not saying British authorities are particularly clever for working this out. It wasn't. We've been a bit lucky, but it does seem to be panning out nicely. Dr. Peter English, who was in charge of quite a few groups for quite some time, people whose immune system have produced a strong T-cell response but a weaker antibody response might be more likely to be infected in the first place. Okay, so it was apparently lower efficacy levels, but more likely to be able to fight the infection, and they would be much less likely to develop a severe disease, which is good. Although, we have to say that in Gibraltar, the majority of vaccine there used was the Pfizer, actually. But there again, we see infections are increasing there now. So anyway, going on, Dr. Peter English, it's plausible that this generated an excellent T cell response, which means that while people can still be infected and infectious, they can still pass it on, which is why it's now endemic. They're unlikely to be seriously unwell, which of course is what we want, and indeed what we saw in Gibraltar, although as we said that was the Pfizer vaccine. Oxford University Professor Matthew Sharp: the best T cell response seems to come if you give a first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine followed by the Pfizer. Interesting. And of course this is exactly what we've been doing. People who've had 2 doses of AstraZeneca are now getting 1 dose of Pfizer as their booster. And it does seem that this is probably generating the optimum response. So another reason to be optimistic. And Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert, one of the leading developers, of course, of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, actually thinks the jabs may not be necessary. But that's not government policy. But it's an interesting point of view. Now, I think we'll have a quick look at the UK.